Welcome to Writing on Caffeine, the podcast where you can come along on a journey with a father and daughter as we attempt to write our first novels. I am Jonathan Franzone, and this is my daughter.
I'm Ragan, also Franzone.
And today marks a special milestone for us. It is our 8th episode.
Woohoo.
And the experts say, I don't know who these experts are, but they say that if you can make it to the 8th episode, then there's a higher probability of your podcast making it.
Yep, so we're having a party.
That's right. So today we are recording at my house again instead of the Coffee Break Cafe. And today we have coffee. I am drinking Dunkin' Donut, just breakfast blend.
Yep.
With hazelnut creamer. Are you drinking the same thing?
Yep.
And Austin, you have water?
I have water, which is my preference.
That's right. So, we have someone extra with us today. This is Austin Brown. He is a published author. And so for our 8th episode, we thought we would have an author on that we could interview and ask him about his writing process. So welcome to the show, Austin.
Well, thank you. I'm in their lovely home. His wife has recently just gone to Target, I believe, right? With all the kids.
Yes.
So we have a quiet house with a new dog.
So, tell us a little bit to get going, how you got into writing, how you decided to, one, write books, and then what that journey looked like getting to publish a book.
So, I guess it begins, actually, when you were a kid. Did you ever play Dungeons & Dragons?
I did, yes.
Yeah, and so I was the guy, the DM, who created the adventures. And I loved creating quests, I guess you'd call them.
Yeah.
For my dorky friends, you know what I mean? We just would do these quests.
A campaign?
Yes, a campaign. And I just would love to give descriptions to, the world. And so fast forward, probably about 14, 15 years ago, we went to Virginia. It's where my mom's family kind of grew up, and they call it the Holler down there in, no man's land. And this relative gave me a copy of Moby Dick.
Nice.
Now, up to this point, most of my life, I hadn't read really much. I mean, a little, mostly theology, nonfiction.
Right.
But never really fiction. So she gave me this book, and I started it, and I'm like, let me see if I can get the audiobook. And I could get the audiobook, and I tell you what, hearing the genius of Moby Dick made me go, I want to do that.
Yeah.
I want to somehow pull this off.
Awesome.
Now, that was, a fool's errand. Trying to be like Melville. But basically, it made me put pen to paper, and I just started writing about my daily... They say to write about what you know, right? Mm-hmm. So I just started writing about my daily affairs as a mailman and just putting together the crazy stories and things that I experienced. And I started reading a couple of them to my wife, and she's like, these are pretty funny. You should just keep going. I'm like, yeah, all right. Well, next thing you know, I've got a lot of them. Next thing you know, I've got basically a book length. And I started editing it down, and so it basically culminated in Walking with the Mailman, which was a surprisingly popular book. Go figure. People, for whatever reason,
want to read about a mailman.
Want to hear about a mailman battling dogs and tornadoes and people wanting their SSI checks and everything else.
Right. I wonder if when the term going postal went big, that it maybe drove some sales to your book.
Yeah, I've certainly heard that a fair bit. And that was a joke in the book.
Oh, right? Was it?
Oh, yeah,
Nice.
because, you definitely, we actually had it was kind of a joke amongst us, but not really. Like, we'd be sitting around at lunch, some of the carriers, and we'd be like, this is a dumb game to play, but this is what we did. What do you think the odds are that Tony could go postal? So we would play that dumb game. It was so bad. But we're like, then we'd be like, Larry? Ooh, yeah, maybe Larry.
That's funny.
That is very funny.
Oh, man.
So that was your very first book, the Mailman.
Yeah,
book.
Walking with the Mailman. And I think what was helpful with that one is it's playful, it's just kind of funny, and I have a ready audience. At that time there was like 800,000 postal employees. I think 600,000, 800,000, something like that. Mm-hmm. And so I had a audience that I could target,
Yeah.
Right.
which, and then word of mouth got around, and it did okay. I mean, it did all right.
Yeah.
I'm still working at the post office. It didn't do that well, but
And did you self-publish that, or?
yeah, I did. It was funny because it's such a bummer. I'll tell you a heartbreak story. Lori Abkermeyer is her name, and she was the literary agent who did people like Jeff Foxworthy.
Yeah.
And Kid, I think Rock. What's his name?
Kid Rock?
Yeah. I mean, big literary agent. I queried her, sent the first 3 chapters, and she's like, hey, I really like this. Send me the rest. I'm like, okay. Send her to the rest, and she's like, I really like the book, but I don't think it has enough payoff. Like, you didn't get the girl, you didn't overcome cancer,
Right.
something like that, so I'm going to have to pass. And I'm like, if only, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
What would have been the world where she said yes?
Right. Yeah.
But she said no.
Absolutely. So, are you working on anything currently?
Yeah, I'm working on a fiction, can you call it post-apocalyptic when it's during the thing that causes the apocalypse? What is that called? Apocalyptic, I guess?
Yeah.
I think
guess.
so, yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Apocalyptic.
So it's apocalyptic, and it's fiction, and imagine, here's the premise, imagine that a meteorite strikes somewhere in the Pacific Ocean, and on that was some strange critter that proliferates at an exponential, unimaginable rate in the bottom of the ocean. Just feeding on everything, and it just multiplies unbelievably. And so by the time these things come ashore, there are billions of them. And they're like the size of a rabbit. They're just creatures, dumb creatures, but they just devour everything. And they're moving inland. And let's say you're a young Christian family living in Texas who now realizes you have to press north.
Right.
And everybody else is at the same time. And society's completely falling apart. And they're just trying to get to Minnesota to his parents' house. But at the beginning of that journey, their 3-year-old son has an asthma attack and dies. And as Christian parents, they're wrestling with God.
Right.
So it's called, tentatively, Until the Breaking of the Day, because there's that phrase when Jacob wrestled with God until the breaking of the day.
Oh, that's
So,
good.
Anyway, so that's what I'm working on.
Yeah, that sounds really cool.
Yes.
And you just started on that, or been working on it a while?
Yeah, a few months, just trying to get the conceptual pieces in place. I mean, probably like how you guys are at, right? You guys are both working on something, and would you say you have it all mapped out, or are you more like, I'm just still toying with it?
That's a great question. So,
Well, see, the thing is, for me at least, I've been attempting to draft, but I am 100% a plotter.
Okay.
And so I plotted very briefly and then went straight into drafting, and then I had absolutely no idea what I was doing. So I've taken a step
What do you
back.
mean?
I was drafting, and I had no idea like where I was going with this story. Like,
Okay.
I didn't
Even
quite...
though you had it mapped out.
I had it very briefly mapped out.
Oh,
like,
okay.
I had like major plot points,
Gotcha.
but nothing in between.
Yeah, okay.
So I don't really fly by the seat of my pants with writing, so I have to kind of know every single thing that's going to happen along the way. I did not, so I've had to take a step back and expound on my outline before I can move forward with drafting.
So do you still feel paralyzed or no?
No, actually I feel a lot better now that I've been
so
working on actually understanding my story a little bit more.
Okay.
yeah. So are you a plotter or a pantser?
So I think what I do is I don't know about you guys, but when you write, do you see an image that you want to convey? See, I have always an image. Like when the kid was dying, I wanted them on this road, some highway out in the rural area of Oklahoma. I just see this image, cars strewn everywhere, and they're going to go out into a field and he's going to die. And I just see it.
Right.
So that's what I want to start with. And I have a few points along the way that I just want to happen, and I know how I want to end. But otherwise, I just let it.
So you just discovery right.
I just discovery right.
Wow.
I find that if you can get the characters worked out in your head, and if you can get the world wound up, whatever fantasy world or whatever it might be, I I'd say just let it write itself. Just let it go. Just let it unwind. Just see what happens.
Just see where it goes.
It's kind of fun. I mean, the worst case scenario is you write it and you don't like it. And you just go, I mean, I sent you that one thing.
Yeah.
And I scrapped all of that.
Oh, did you?
Yeah.
I thought it was really good.
Yeah, no, I was like, no, I want to start somewhere different, and I'm happier with that.
Well, I've still got a copy, so.
Okay.
Well, I guess they call it aphantasia. Mm-hmm. I do not think at all in images.
Oh, really?
I have, like, when I'm reading a book, I don't see images.
Whoa, you don't see anything?
No.
Not depressing.
I just process words.
No, wait a minute. So if I say the couple were sitting by the large hearth, mm-hmm. and the fire was crackling, you don't see that.
In my head, I get, like, very brief, like, almost what I would call, like, stock images. So you say couple, and my brain processes what a couple is. Yeah. You say hearth, my brain, I know what a hearth is, but I do not see it in my head. So if you say, like, you know, like a purple apple, mm-hmm. I know what a purple is, and I know what an apple is, but I do not see a purple apple in my head.
Can you conjure other people's faces?
No. Okay. Very poorly. Like, I have such, like, I struggle with describing characters.
That's interesting. I've heard that's a thing. Mm-hmm. But I don't know. I mean, it's not like I go around, hey, can you picture a purple apple? You know?
I'm very pictorial in my imagery, in my mind. Now, what do you do for a living, Ragan?
I'm a nurse.
So nurses like to tell stories mm-hmm. about what they do during their nursing life.
Right.
Which are often really gross.
Yeah.
So she will start telling me these stories. And I have to tell her, like, no, that's enough. Like, she doesn't really understand it because for her it's just words, but for me, like, I'm visually, like, graphically seeing everything you're describing.
And then I cleaned the stump.
Right. And now I'm, like, cringing and just hurting.
So hold on. So when you tell a story about something like that, like something with nursing, like let's say somebody has they cut their thumb off, mm-hmm. let's just say.
Yeah.
And you're telling the story about that, you don't see it even though you worked on it? Do you see it then?
I remember it.
Yes.
But no, I don't, like, conjure up, re-image it in my head.
That's so interesting.
It's almost like, think like those little like a recipe box, and you, like, mm-hmm. tab through, mm-hmm. and my brain just, like, pulls up. It's almost like it's pulling up, like, a document.
Right, but it's never flipping fast enough that it creates movement.
Right.
Like a movie image movement. Mm-mm. No, that's interesting.
Yeah, it's really weird.
I don't even know how to wrap my head around this in terms of then writing.
Yeah, it's a fun time.
Interesting.
I pull a lot of imagery and, like, description mm-hmm. from my experience reading.
Yes. Now, if you see a picture, like let's say there's this cottage out in some, like, almost like Wyoming pasture. Mm-hmm. You can surely picture that in your mind. Is it just an image, right?
Well, no, not really.
Really?
I just... So, but if I was
tricky.
writing about...
This is so tricky.
So if I was writing about that,
yeah.
You know, you say a cottage in Wyoming in a field,
yeah.
I know what cottages generically look like. I have that in my head, so I can describe a cottage. Right. I can describe the field. But I don't see it.
There was a small dainty cottage nestled in the hills of, mm-hmm. And you just do that.
Yeah. But I don't see it.
I have to think about this. This is very strange.
Yeah, very interesting.
I guess it'd be like somebody colorblind. They're trying to write about a sunset.
Yeah, kind of.
I guess a little bit, right?
Yeah.
Or somebody who's blind even. That's another question, right? Do blind people write?
That's a good question. I don't know.
That would be tricky.
Yeah.
How would that... That would be interesting. Now I'm curious.
I have to do some research.
Yeah, blind people writing. Okay.
So in your process of writing, Austin, do you have, like, a set routine, a set time, a location?
Yes.
A ritual or something that you do?
Yes,
Tell us about that.
For me, I definitely... It's the same spot. It's a desktop in our bedroom. And I like to either... Ideally, I get up and I'll... eat a bowl of cereal, get dressed and all that, and then write. Not right away, not early, but just in the morning. I'm best in the morning. Mm. But I'll tell you what, if you're ever, this is one of my, maybe this is jumping ahead to a question you'll ask, but if you're ever stumped, walk.
Yes.
Walk and think about it. for some reason, walking, I don't know what it does to your brain.
Yeah, absolutely.
But it makes it fire. So I'll literally, if I'm really stuck, I won't sit at the computer. It's like, all right, I'm just going to go walk. Even pace if you have to.
Right.
And it just does something. But yeah, I like to write. I mean, life forces me to write at night. So usually I would say 9 to 10, come, no matter what, you got to write.
And just sit down and write.
You sit down and write.
Yeah.
It's like brushing your teeth. You got to do it.
Yeah, that's interesting about walking. I'm a software engineer and I work from home. So often, like around lunchtime, I will go either run or walk. And I get a lot of my ideas while I'm walking for either my book or even solving problems at work.
Yes.
Like the brain just seems to work better.
Yes, and it was a perfect fit as a mailman because I literally walk
you're walking
all day.
Right.
Yeah. Now, obviously, it's weird because the fertility of the thinking comes and goes.
Right,
So you can't do it all day.
Yeah.
But there's these little 20-minute segments where you're like, I don't know. It's weird. It's so mysterious anyway where ideas come from. Like, how does that even work?
Yeah.
You're just going along with an idea. I don't know.
I read from this one author, I can't remember his name, but he utilized this with audio recording to write books. So he would go for long walks on trails and just dictate into his phone, and then he'd go back later and transcribe them, and that's how he wrote.
I mean, that can work.
Yeah.
That can work.
Absolutely.
I can see that.
I have no routine.
You don't?
No. Usually, if it hits when I get home, like 5 or 6, I'll sit down and I'll write for a little bit, but it's never like set. Sometimes I'll do it in the mornings because I don't work every single day of the week.
How's that working for you?
Good question. I'm not sure.
Ragan, you got to get a routine.
I do need to get a routine. I need to get better at holding myself to the routine.
That's right.
Because, see, this is my problem.
I mean, do you do your hair in the morning?
Usually.
Brush your teeth?
Yes.
Yeah, so that's what
optional.
I'm saying. Yeah, well, you go. Right. My point is you just gotta just like...
Yeah.
You gotta make yourself do it.
But here's my problem. I'll set a routine for myself. I'll be like, tonight, I'm going to sit down at 5 o'clock and I'm going to write for an hour. And then it hits 5 o'clock and I'm like, yeah, but she's a real pushover, so she's not really going to care if we don't. I could just read instead, right?
Right. You gotta slap that voice.
Yeah.
That's right.
You gotta slap that voice. Because we all have it. We really do. With exercise or anything. It's like, I could probably get by today.
Right. Just not. Yeah.
I really need to go exercise. You know what I mean?
Right.
Yeah.
Why do today what you can put off till tomorrow?
That's right. That's right. What about you? Do you have a routine yet?
I do not have a set routine. So usually if I do work on my writing, it's in the morning. But we have a lot of little kids. And so if I get up early in the morning, I'm usually with them. And then so I wait till I get to work. And then I have a meeting at work. And then... I'll take a half hour or so after that meeting to try to work on my writing.
Oh, that's good. I mean, it really is simple math, right? Like 200 words, 5 days a week.
Yeah.
1,000 words in a year. It's pretty good.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Doug Wilson has a great book on this called Productivity.
Yeah.
Have you read it?
I haven't, but
it's really
I've heard of
good.
it.
And that's his premise is just if all you can write is 20 words right now, then just do 20 words.
Yeah. Yeah, that really is.
And over the course of time, you have a
Or,
book.
or sometimes fool yourself. Here's a good trick you can do, and I find this works with me. I'm not going to write, I'm just going to edit what I've done. And then you sit down, and you're like, I just want to make this sentence better. And then it'll naturally, like, okay, I'm here. You know what I mean? I got the juices kind of flowing. We can get a few more sentences down.
Yeah.
You just got to hack your brain.
So is that your best piece of writing advice? Just do something every day?
That and read.
And read. Okay, great.
I do that a lot.
Yes. Lots of reading, or even listening to it. Because it's like a different... I mean, do you ever listen to audiobooks?
All the time.
Yeah. It's a different experience, isn't it?
Yes.
Like when you read it as opposed to hearing it, especially if it's read really well.
Yes.
Like I don't know if you've ever heard Richard Poe.
No, I haven't.
Oh, my goodness. And Frank... What's his name? I think Frank Muller.
Oh, I've heard Frank Muller,
Oh,
yeah.
my goodness. I mean, they can make a phone book sound amazing.
Yeah.
They're so good. I mean, do you guys have anything that you're like, now that person brings it to life?
That Harry Potter guy.
Yeah, he's good.
Oh, Jim Dale?
Yeah.
He's good.
He is really good.
He's very good. But I find that if I'm listening to a book, like when I'm delivering the mail, it'll just get sometimes my mind will move away from the book I'm listening to and it'll just bring sentences to me. It's weird. I don't know. It's weird. And I'll just jot them down, and then sometimes I'll get home and I'll be like, oh, that's terrible. You know? I was so excited about that. It's so bad.
Yes.
You know?
That is a good practice that I've gotten away from. Is I used to have a notebook that I would just carry around everywhere and just jot down ideas anytime they came to me. But I haven't done it in a while.
Well, and I would say go out and buy a nice. You know how they have those like nice little leather books or like little notebooks or whatever. Mm-hmm. Buy a nice one and just have that just for ideas for your book, because it's almost like the niceness of the little leather thing invites good thoughts. It's so weird. I don't know why, but it's almost like, you just feel different when you wear a suit and tie.
That's true.
And there's something about if you get the little cheap 35-cent thing at Walmart. Yeah. It's not the same as the leather book, because you feel like I got to put a good thing in there.
A good thing, yeah.
And it's weird. I don't know. It kind of works.
That's a good idea.
Is there any kryptonite to you getting words on the page?
Yeah,
life.
Right?
Yeah.
But particularly, just when there's trouble in your life, right? Mm-hmm. When you're stressed about something, that is kryptonite to writing. Or even if there's something really interesting, like let's say I have some kind of theological issue that I'm wrestling with somebody over email. Mm-hmm. I'm going to write like garbage while I'm doing it. You know what I mean? Because I'm thinking about, the theology and the other things. So yeah, I think it's as simple as that. Do you guys? Because that's an interesting question. Is there something beyond just life in general?
No, for me, life is it, because we have 5 little kids.
Yeah.
In the house, and so life is just very busy.
Demands.
Yeah. And by the time, if I wanted to write at night, by the time it gets to night,
you're shot.
My brain just doesn't work.
Yeah, you're shot. Yeah, I get that. I understand. Yeah. That's hard. What about you?
Well, I don't have kids, and I kind of live by myself. Yeah. So I think my kryptonite is actually if I'm reading a book that I'm really engaged in.
Oh, you're just like, why write when I can just read?
Exactly. I want to know what happens to this character. I want to move on and just figure out what's going on in this book. But I try and write at least once a day, even if I only get a little bit done.
So in a great book that you love, do you ever just circle a paragraph and just say, I need to come back and analyze this. It was so beautiful that I need to deconstruct it and figure out what's going on. Do you do that?
No, but I do annotate when I read. But I've said this before on the podcast, I usually read a book, and if I really like it, I'll go back and read it again. Mm-hmm. And the second time, I'm not just processing the storyline, I'm processing the character development. Craft. Right. And then the third time, I'll go through and annotate it. Yes. And I do frequently read books 3 times.
Okay, well there you go. Okay, well that's, you're ahead of the curve on that then.
Yeah, one book I listened to, it's been a couple years, I think, was Piranesi.
Oh, yeah.
Mm-hmm. And I actually listened to the audiobook, and listening to the words flowing out of that book, they were just beautiful. Mm-hmm. And so I did go back and listen to a couple sections again.
Reading it on paper is brutal.
Is it?
Yeah.
Is it?
It is. At least I was like, I'm so bored. But then again, I have aphantasia. So I'm not picturing any of this in my head. I'm like, he's just describing houses for so many pages.
Yeah, if you can't picture things, then
it's a struggle.
That might be a struggle.
Man, okay. That's so challenging.
Now, you mentioned theology. Now, you write fiction as well as nonfiction. Is that right?
That's right.
So tell me about some of your nonfiction writing.
In terms of what I've done?
Right.
Let's see. So Walking with the Mailman, I guess, would technically be nonfiction.
That's true, yeah.
It's more
kind of memoir.
Memoir. Yeah, memoir humor is really what that was. And then a book called Satan's Awful Idea, a biblical theology of Satan's fall and its implications on the unfolding human drama. Oh. Very Puritan-esque, right?
Yeah.
We got to go long.
I was going to say that, yeah.
Yeah, so it's basically a work on Satan's fall and its implications on human history.
Interesting.
And then there's one called The Case for Utter Hopelessness, Why Atheism Leads to Unyielding Despair.
Awesome.
it's basically my argument why I would kill myself if I was really convinced there was no God.
That is the logical conclusion.
Yeah.
That's what I try to press on the reader. And so that is if you're looking for a really uplifting book, that is it. If you're in the mood for like nihilism,
Right.
that's
awesome.
your book. And then my latest one was a boisterously reformed polemic against limited atonement. And that has been by far the most popular book so far. And then by popular, I mean people hate me.
Oh, okay.
Good times.
Well, I did pick that one up, and I'm looking forward to reading it.
Well, it's entertaining. Everybody comes away from at least going, well, it was very engaging. I may disagree with you, but actually it's been very mixed. Some people love it, and some people hate it.
If you're talking about the atonement, I think that's the logical outcome.
That is the logical outcome.
So, is your process different for writing fiction versus nonfiction?
Yes. Yeah, totally. Like, if I don't, I said I kind of let the characters flow. With nonfiction, it's so front-loaded with in research and investigation. I mean, it's like just so completely different. Because it's almost like with fiction, sometimes you can get lost with the possibilities. Well, do I want this to happen, this to happen, this to happen, this, or they can be like this, they can be, you know what I mean? Sometimes you get paralyzed by just the sheer possibility. Yeah. Where I feel like with nonfiction, it's so much easier in terms of the structure, but it's just so much harder in terms of the don't screw this up.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like you really gotta, people are going to nitpick you, and they're going to be like, hey, you're a moron on page 67. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So So in that sense, a lot of research, and then as you're researching, keeping track of the quotes, because, when you get up to 100 footnotes, 200 footnotes, you're like trying to keep track of a lot of stuff. So yeah, it's very different, and I find writing nonfiction way easier than fiction, actually.
Really?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Yeah, by far.
I've done some research papers for seminary, and I do really enjoy that type of work. Mm-hmm. And it does seem very straightforward. So if I'm writing on the problem of evil, I pretty much know what the topic is going to be.
Exactly.
And where it's going.
And almost just titling the chapters segments them off nicely, right?
Yeah.
Right. So, yeah, it just is easier, I think. So, I'm curious.
Yeah.
You have a goal to finish your drafts.
Yes.
By the end of this year.
Yes.
And if you don't, what happens? Because you have to, here's the thing. You have to say, if this doesn't happen, then I have to run like a marathon. Like, you have to have a punishment. There has to be something that makes you go, no, we have to do this.
I really don't want to run a marathon. Yeah.
Right. Like,
I've run 2 marathons.
So okay. So, I mean, that's impressive. 2 marathons?
Yes.
That's a lot of running.
It is a lot of running.
That's a lot of running. I mean, in other words, you guys need to say...
So find a consequence for not...
Yeah, like, if you don't, you have to give me $500.
I'm not...
Good try. E for effort, right there.
Right. Nice.
That is interesting. I've never thought about that.
But no, do it to each other. Like, if she doesn't, then you have to say, well, then you have to do this for me, and vice versa. You have to hold each other accountable.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
If you really want to see it happen and not time just dribble away, and 3 years from now you're going, well, I'm still thinking about it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
You have to. It's like running.
Yeah.
When you wanted to run a marathon, I bet you were extremely diligent.
Oh, yeah. You put it on the calendar and you do it.
Exactly.
And there was even this one time where I had the flu, and I was trying to negotiate with myself. Well, I could probably run half the distance and be all right.
Yeah. While
While I had the flu.
Oh man, right.
I didn't. Aubrey was like, "No, you need to rest."
And no joke, writing is as hard as that.
Yeah.
You have to be that disciplined. Otherwise, unless you're like a savant, right? These people who can just... Who are we talking about?
Brandon Sanderson.
Like, Mr. Sanderson, you make me sick.
But also you're incredible and we love you.
Yeah, I mean, it's amazing that would you say 5 books a year?
I think
Something like that.
He does a lot.
I mean, that's like the baby that comes out of the womb and can like juggle. Like, okay, you're just divinely blessed, right?
Yeah.
It's more power to you.
Definitely.
He's also a very hard worker, so.
Oh, I don't doubt it. It's just, that's astonishing, and he would be the rare jewel.
Yeah.
The rare jewel.
Which is probably why he's so well sold.
Yeah.
His books.
Yeah.
So.
Because you're saying the quality is good?
Oh
it's
yeah.
excellent.
It's incredible.
Yeah. I mean, look. That's remarkable. I mean, Stephen King, I'm not actually a Stephen King fan, but you have to at least applaud the sheer volume of books that he puts out.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
It's amazing. And the guy who writes, and I'm not promoting this, but what's his name? R.R. Martin, the Game of Thrones guys. Because I remember seeing an interview with him, those two together one time, and he was like, how do you write so fast? How do you do this? Because, the guy who writes Game of Thrones, he's like, I write so slowly, and that's the norm.
Yeah.
And so all of us mortals look at these other people, and you're like, how do you do this?
Yeah.
Just disgusting.
It is.
Yeah.
It's frustrating to me.
Oh, it is.
Especially with having so many other things to do.
Right.
I can't just sit down and
Right.
sit by a fire and write a novel.
I mean,
That's the dream, though.
That is the dream.
I mean, I like basketball, but I'm no LeBron James. You know what I mean?
I know my desire to write a book is to prove it to myself that I can write a book. It's not necessarily to become like popular or famous or anything. It's just I want it to prove to myself that I can do this.
That's great.
Yeah.
Yeah. So don't let yourself down.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Don't do it.
We'll have to set some consequences.
Yeah.
Just
figure out
keep
what those
going.
are.
Even if it's garbage, because most of the time, I can't tell you how many times I've written something, my first draft, and I'm like, this is pretty good. And then you set it aside for a month, and you come back and you're like, I'm horrible. Why am I doing this? It's like distance gives you perspective, and you're like, or when you hand it to somebody else to read, and then you read it after you've given it to them, you're like, oh no.
What have I done?
What have I done? This is horrible.
Why did I send that to them?
You start immediately regretting your choices.
Yes.
Right.
So just embrace the horror of how bad it's going to be, and just edit. And that's you can do it. You really can.
Yeah. Well, we'll see. I guess we have till the end of the year. I'm going to set. We're going to set
Lord
consequences.
We will set some consequences.
Lord willing, 2020 into 2023, I'm going to say, Ragan, do you have that draft done? You're going to go, yes, I do.
Yeah. And it's terrible, but we're going to edit it.
So is there anything you do to celebrate when you finish a draft?
No, because the sad reality is like you that's just the beginning.
The beginning.
It really is. But when you really do, I remember when I was finishing Walking with the Mailman, I was actually at the back of my truck. It was hot. It was like 90 degrees. I'm in the sun. And I was writing my final paragraph about me at the back of my truck, sweating, finishing this. And it was such a good feeling to be like, I'm done. I made it.
That's awesome.
Now I got to do all this work.
Yeah. Well, and I had been editing for a while, and I left the very end off. Mm-hmm. And it was like, okay, that's just a good way to end.
Yeah.
To break down the fourth wall, as it were.
Right. Yeah.
And here I am. And so, I don't know. It is a really, really good feeling. And then you realize, like with so many things in life, you're just this tiny little drop in an ocean of other talent.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah.
And much of it that's better than you. And you just go, well. Oh well,
And with the advent of self-publishing and Amazon, like it's only gotten exponentially larger.
There's millions.
There's so many authors.
Millions,
out there.
millions, and millions.
Right.
Well, and we talked about this a little bit. Maybe I don't want to keep this going too long, but writing something, if anything, just to pass down to your children someday. Pass down to your children and grandchildren. I mean, that's a great thing to be able to say. I mean, wouldn't you love if your grandfather or great-grandfather had some story they wrote and that...
Absolutely,
yeah. And you could be like, something interesting that, your dad wrote.
Right.
That would be great. Maybe, I don't know, I have no idea your story, but I would love that. And so I want to give that to my children.
Yeah, that would be a great gift. So, we usually wrap up the podcast by talking about what we are currently reading. We did talk a little bit earlier about how reading impacts your writing. So, are you reading anything good currently?
Maybe you guys do this. I don't know. I try to read what I want to emulate when I'm writing.
Oh, okay.
And so I've decided with this current book, I want to emulate All the Pretty Horses by Cormac McCarthy. It's a Western. And he's very fond of using the biblical and, like a lot of ands instead of commas. Mm-hmm. And there's a rhythm to it that's just, I think, really powerful. And so anyway, I'm immersing myself in that book just to get that rhythm in me.
Oh, okay.
So anyway, yeah, that's
fascinating.
What I'm doing. What about you?
I am currently reading The End of the Magi.
Okay.
So it's a historical fiction book about, it's kind of a conjecture about how the Magi ended up going to see Christ. And it all comes from Daniel, and so he knew this was coming, and so he set up this organization in place of all these Magi who were keeping a calendar because they knew it was one day going to come to
that's cool.
Yeah, so.
And you're enjoying it?
Yeah, it's playful, it's really fun. So I'm actually listening to it. It's an audiobook. And I'm also currently on my second year of Ayn Rand's Atlas Shrugged.
Oh.
Just slowly.
Yeah.
It's a huge book.
Wow.
But hopefully I'll make it through it.
Are you enjoying that? Or is it just slog that you're like, I'm disciplined?
There have been parts that I have enjoyed. So I've really enjoyed the interplay between Marxism and capitalism. She has some really great things in there to say. And I'm about 40% through the book. And it's finally getting exciting.
Don't you wish other people would exercise that kind of patience towards
right.
your own writing?
Absolutely. It's billed as a political thriller.
Yeah.
It's not for the first 40% of the book.
And it's taken you 2 years to get through 40%? Oh.
Almost a year now.
Okay.
So I'm going into my second year of it. So that's what I'm reading. And you, Ragan?
Well, since the last podcast, I finished reading The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. So I'm reading through those again. And I have The Horse and His Boys sitting on my side table to pick up.
That is my favorite book of that series.
I really like that one.
Yeah,
that's good. Yeah.
I am still reading the third Divergent book, and it's a struggle. Because all three of those books, I feel like, are the exact same book.
No.
Just in different settings.
Like a moneymaker kind of move.
Yeah. But I'm going to finish it because I know they were so popular, and I just want to see what all the hype was about, and now I can't back out now. I'm already almost done with the last book.
I can't remember, are there movies on that or no?
Yes, and they're terrible. Don't watch
terrible.
them. Yeah. They are in no way close to accurate to the books.
Okay.
So.
Which might be good.
Maybe we just don't read the books then.
Yeah. How does Divergent compare to, like, because I'm not familiar with that. What was the one?
No, the Hunger Games?
Yes.
Yeah.
How's that compare to that? Same kind of dystopian.
The Hunger Games, I thought, was incredible. I
Okay.
really loved
It was
it.
good,
It's
yeah.
a great, like, political
I only
commentary.
read the first one, but
It's
I
got a
liked
very
it.
good storyline. I feel like most of the dystopian books that followed the Hunger Games were just trying to kind of emulate that and fell. So far from that, because they're just, instead of getting the depth that you got with the Hunger Games, they're just doing like surface level, like love triangle, the world is ending.
Right.
So it's kind of not very good.
Right.
And
I mean, publishers, right? They're going to try to snatch
Yeah.
up that space.
it was popular, so they published
Yeah.
it. And then also, I am reading The Way of Kings by Brandon Sanderson. I finally made it past the first 3 prologues.
3 prologues?
Yeah. And,
Wait, how's that work? Is a prologue to a prologue to a prologue?
Yeah. I think there's 2.
I think there's 2. And
There's 2 prologues
maybe
and
an
then
introduction.
and an intro or something like that. Yeah. So I made it past those.
Okay.
I'm slowly making my way through that, and then also I'm on my 3rd read through and annotation of The Assassin's Blade by Sarah J. Maas.
Oh, okay, yeah.
And then what kind of book is that?
It's a YA fantasy.
Okay. Mm-hmm. And that's what, just to be clear, that's what you're planning on writing as a YA fantasy?
Yes.
And you said a middle grade fantasy.
Middle grade fantasy. Yeah, so mine is, it starts out fantasy, so it's in an alternate world, but it crosses over to an Earth-like, so it'll be almost like an urban fantasy.
Now, the plus side with middle grade is that you won't need as high of a word count.
Exactly.
That is the point.
That's one of the reasons I picked that genre.
I was going to say, you can get by with what? I can't remember what they usually say on middle grade.
I think about 50,000 is on the high end.
Yeah, that's good. 40,000. Here we go.
So I should be able to do that.
Yeah, but you're looking at
Like 55,000, I think, is like
60,
the average.
Yeah, even 60 or so. Yeah, unless it's Harry Potter, then book 7 was like door
Yeah.
stopper.
Right. Well, they were moved out of
Yeah, I think they moved out of middle grade into maybe like
YA. And
there's like this new category that they have between like middle grade and YA now, and it's like new young adults.
New young adults.
They have like new young adult, and then they have young adult. Now they also have new adult.
Oh, goodness.
Which are like all
mid-ish adult.
Yes,
mid-ish adult.
Mid-adult.
Mid-ish.
Yeah. So.
All right, Austin. As we close up, is there anywhere people can go to find you online to read more about you?
I guess I do have a website that I blog at occasionally called soundofdoctrine.wordpress.com.
Okay, we'll put a link to that on the show notes. Thank you for joining us in this 8th episode of Writing on Caffeine. We hope you'll join us again in 2 weeks. Please subscribe wherever you find podcasts. If you are so inclined, leave us a review. 5-star reviews are preferred. Be sure to visit the website, writingoncaffeine.com, where you can view the show notes and subscribe to our email list so that you never miss an episode. Bye-bye.
Also, we have a new Instagram page. So, yeah.
Yes, and check us out on Instagram.
Bye!
Have a great day.